Hi there. In today's video, I will give a quick walkthrough on how I use ClickUp Super Agent to help me create a lot of tasks to service a client without missing any task. So let's get started. This is the space that I have for home renovation company. In it I have 4 lists. One is the client list, and then these 3 are the evolvement of how one can be managing their task, and the green one is the final list, which I will be showing at the end. So first, let's start from understanding the client's list. As a home renovation service, there might be different parameters that we might be dealing with on our services, such as are we going to provide what kind of service, for example on kitchen, bathroom, basement, or many more. And is permit required or not, what kind of style. So based on this, we might be generating different sets of tasks, and for George, the set of tasks might look different from Anna James. She might want to renovate her bathroom. It does not require a permit, and then the style is minimalist. So for these 2 very different clients, we might have very different set of tasks that we need to do. And if you're only dealing with 1 or 2 tasks, it is not a big deal. We just create them manually. However, when we are dealing with complex services that require a long list of tasks, having to do these things manually would take a lot of time, and secondly, high risk to actually miss some tasks. And for some industry which has tight deadline or tight regulation, it might be detrimental for our clients, so we want to avoid that. So in the beginning, we might start with actually creating an onboarding task for George. As I said, we can very well start with a checklist. For example, George, given that he wants to renovate his kitchen in traditional style, so he needs to select the countertop material, select cabinetry, install countertops. So there are a lot of things that he needs to do. But with this, the approach is it's not very clear on when, and if we want to take and make progress on each, we only have 1 ticket, and it is making it difficult to actually make progress and kind of go back to the notes here, and we have to scroll all the way on our comments and make progress on each one of these within just 1 task. So that's where then we can create a separate to-do list to show how I can create a unique task for each of the task for George for his selections. And then as you can see, right now I have 29, but this can very well be longer depending on, again, the services that the company provides. So if I were to onboard a new client, Anna, and I have to create the task list for Anna, I would have to do these things manually, and I have to fill this in manually, or in ClickUp there's an option to actually build a template. However, we have different combination of things, as you know, from this list, which makes combination of templates difficult to maintain because the number becomes too long. So as you can see, if I'm going to the task manual here now, if I want to create the task list for Anna, it is long and probably not manageable if I were to do it manually. So the end result that we want to arrive at is actually something like this. So for each of the parameters that we may have different set of tasks. So for example, For home renovation, just in general, whether they are doing kitchen, bathroom, or basement, we have a set of tasks. So that is one bucket. And if one wants to do a traditional style, it has a set of tasks. And if one requires a permit, then it requires a set of tasks. And based on that, it will the list will have a combination of all of these things. So if we expand this, these are the set of tasks that will be relevant for all home renovation customers, regardless of what they are doing. This one is only valid for traditional, and so on and so forth. So if I want to generate the set of tasks for Anna, how do we do that? So today we can again create a template. One is for general, traditional, kitchen, permit required. So at the end, I may have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 templates depending on the different options and the parameters that I have. So that is difficult to manage. So what I want to show you is how I use Super Agent to actually generate this. So I'm gonna copy this, and I have what's called the home renovation task generator. And so if I pass this, it's gonna read through the variables that Anna has, what kind of selection that she has, which is very different from George, and therefore hopefully it will lead to generation of different set of tasks for Anna without having to do a lot of manual work. Because as in service industry, once you are clear with what services you are providing, it is pretty much very clear requirements for the different parameters as we discussed before. So for now, we have generated the request to generate the task, so we are just wait and see right now. So let's see behind the scene on how this is being generated. So earlier I mentioned that the most difficult thing right now about the template method is that we have to maintain those. However, we don't need to maintain those because we don't have to create templates, because if we are using documents, then we can just have a document that we keep updated, and then the agent will use the document as a reference to then create the right task. So I just want to walk you through kind of the structure of this document. So at the very top, I define the list of custom fields. And by the way, as we are talking, the agent is creating the task and then creating the subtask. So you can see that kind of in action as we are discussing through the doc. So here I'm actually defining the general home renovation task regardless of what kind of services they get, permit required, or style. So this would be required for all, and this due offset days will help us set the due date by default without having to manually enter them one by one. Because if a client enters today and we want the first bill to arrive 30 days from when they become a client, somebody who starts today and somebody who starts 3 days from now will have 3 days different in their due dates, and we don't want to be adding those due dates manually because it takes time and also it's prone to error when we do things manually. So as you can see here, just a distraction. So you can see that right now I have the general, so this general list and this general list should match. However, for the project bathroom versus kitchen, they have different set of tasks. And where do we get this task from? It is from the doc. So we don't have to create the templates because template is difficult to maintain. I think you get the idea. So now let's go back to the document. So here I have the home renovation general, and I have the task name and the description, so that will help us kind of see what the description is. And then, as I mentioned, when we had everything in one task, it's hard to make progress only in one task. But here we have unique tasks for each, and then we can make progress and complete each task. So this one is if it is for kitchen, and then I have this thing called when to use, so that the agent will know that we can use this for what kind of scenarios, and it is unique for just that particular parameter. So general is for everything, kitchen is if service is equal to kitchen, and then the permit and the style is any, bathroom, basement, permit required, right? Any style. So now we are moving to permit required. So as you can see, this becomes any, this becomes any, and then permit required is yes. And then the style modern, it's gonna take any service and any permit. So with this, now if we have many clients and we need to onboard them in different days, we can easily trigger by just making sure that all of these things are populated, and then for I'm using a mention, but we can potentially explore using a status change to trigger this agent, or we can use tag, and we can use button in ClickUp. So there are different ways, but the goal of this recording is to just show the approach. Especially, I think the most important thing is the document and how I am using this, and then instead of coming up with a bunch of templates with the different combinations of the different parameters, I just have one doc. And then just a suggestion, so what we can do is, for example, I like to keep track of the versioning of this. So if this one is for example version 1, and I'm gonna delete, so this is master, so we can keep this, and then this is like a backup. I like to actually give dates, so if this is 15, and then I don't need this page, so I can continue to basically have backup of the different templates that I have as I grow my service, or I add my parameters. I want to have different tasks, so we can actually do this, and we can continue to add to the list of backup while this becomes the primary source for the agent. So we trigger this for Adam, and then we can go back and see under the task that Adam's ticket are being generated now. So you can see it is very repeatable. It is highly automated with very little manual work from me. Within just these few minutes of conversation, while I'm even distracted with doing many different things, the tasks are being generated now. The next step is to actually being able to execute this list of tasks, and that is a topic for another video on how we are going to, for example, when we have so many different clients all going at the same time, how do we make sure execution does not fall through the crack. I think this capability has been very helpful for me, so that I can stay on top of all the tasks needed without missing any of them. And I just, as long as I make sure that I am diligent and careful with not missing anything from this document. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in another video.